Hey guys, welcome back. Tisha here, back for another chapter recording of Stolen Innocence. Go ahead and do me a favor and hit the like button as we jump into this. Hopefully, my signal is good. I am obviously not at home, and I don't know how this is going to go, but the show must go on. So let's jump into chapter 13, All Alone. The only true freedom of a woman is in the abiding of the holy celestial law of marriage, submitting herself to her husband and head and living his law, ruling Jeff's. What on earth? It was late afternoon when we loaded up into the cars for our trip back to Hildale. The ride was long and quiet, and I spent most of it in a daze wondering where I'd be living upon our return. Over the past few years, I had been moved around so many times and never with advance notice. Since learning that I would be married, I had been so busy contesting the marriage that I hadn't thought about where we would live when it was all over, because nobody tells you any of these things. Like, to me, if I'm told I'm getting married, I would at least like to know all of this beforehand. But she's not even allowed to even ask that. Let's say she didn't contest it, she still wouldn't be able to ask those questions. I was relieved when we pulled up to Uncle Fred's and saw the large Jessup family outside to greet us. Everyone had been excitedly awaiting our arrival, and some of the family began snapping pictures as we stepped out of the car. No pictures had been taken of the actual ceremonies because the risk that the documentation would fall into the wrong hands. So these would be the first snapshots for our memory books. Dozens of people were giving their congratulations and posing us for our first husband and wife photos. Everyone was shouting at me to smile, and compliantly I did. I was exhausted and I could barely think straight. Numb, I did as directed and tried hard to put forth my sweetest FLDS face. Outside Uncle Fred's house, a horse drawn carriage was waiting to take the newlywed couples for a ride around town. It belonged to a local FLDS member who had come up to Uncle Fred's for the afternoon to commemorate our wedding day. Without the strength to resist, I took Alan's outstretched hand and climbed aboard for the ride. As soon as we returned to Fred's house, I stepped off and walked inside to avoid continued pressure to pose for more photos. My face was red and swollen from crying, and I refused to honor the repeated pleas to kiss, to kiss Alan for the camera. It doesn't say that many times, it only says it once. But it's just the fact that these are things that she's never done before. And here she is being asked over and over again to kiss him and to do this and to pose when she's never even been with a man like this, let alone one that she loves. After the carriage ride and photos, we went to Alan's parents' home where his entire family had assembled to welcome us. I smiled politely as Alan's mother greeted me with a bouquet of lilacs. One by one, I met his family, who all did their best to make me feel comfortable. Alan's mother had a small business sewing nightgowns and other sleepwear. Ironically, she had sewn my bridal. Ooh, how do you say this? Troussea. Oh, I don't have my phone with me. I should. Um, y'all, I don't know how to pronounce that word, so just deal with the spelling. A white satin gown and pink satin robe with delicate flowers on it. They had been a gift from my mother, who had them made to order by Alan's mom before she even knew I was going to marry him. That night, Uncle Fred had us to his home for dinner, which was followed by ice cream and cake. Still, I had no idea where we would be living. No announcement had been made. At points during the evening, I was overcome by the excitement of the celebration, but inevitably, something would snap me back to the hard truth of my situation. I wanted so badly to be happy and enjoy this moment, but something inside just wouldn't let me. Later that evening, I was pleasantly surprised when my friend Natalie stopped by to wish me well. Though we no longer attended the same school, I've been spending a lot of time with her. We had grown quite close, and she was one of the few people outside of Uncle Fred's home who I could trust and talk to. The morning of the wedding, Natalie's mother, Lavonda, had done my hair. Strangely, Natalie had been silent. I could see that it worried her to watch me prepare for my wedding. I'd been feeling self conscious around her ever since I learned of my impending nuptials, and I noticed awkwardness on her part as well. She seemed to be afraid that being around me would call attention to her and bring her the same fate. Now, here she was at Uncle Fred's house, accompanied by several of her sisters to perform a song in honor of my wedding. The girls had beautiful voices and had produced some music CDs for the community. I was so touched that they would honor me with this lovely performance that I didn't think about what would happen when they left. Watching their eyes glow and hearing their voices glide over the notes, it never occurred to me that the day's events would change my life and friendship with Natalie. I was no longer a single 14-year-old like her. I was officially different. I was married. While she still had the freedom to act like a child, the standards for me had changed overnight. The sad truth was that after that day, we no longer spent time together as close friends. When everyone left Fred's home that evening, a horrible sense of abandonment crept up on me. One minute we were all celebrating, and the next everyone was saying goodbye. Right after prayer service that night, Uncle Fred excitedly led our procession up the stairs to our new bedroom, which was the same room that I had been sleeping in since I arrived at his home. He informed Alan and me that we were going to live in his home until the church assigned us a place of our own. I mean, I guess that this will make her happy because she's still going to be close to her mom. But at the end of the day, she's still now going to be expected to sleep in this room with this man. The news that I would be close to my mother came as a relief, yep. In anticipation of our arrival, he'd instructed some of the mothers to prepare the upstairs bedroom I've been sharing with my two sisters as a honeymoon suite. So this has gone from a room of her and her siblings to now just her and her husband, or is it just for the like? I'm confused. Just inside the door, a handmade banner reading "Honeymoon Hideout" hung across an archway. Peering into the room, I saw that the furniture was different from when I left that morning. The bunk bed my little sister shared had been moved to my mother's room, along with all of their knickknacks. My twin bed had been replaced by a queen size one that I was expected to share with Alan. Did I skip a page? No. Starting that very night, the bedspread had been decorated with dozens of Hershey chocolate kisses arranged in the shape of a big heart. Homemade cookies and sparkling cider had been left for us. Also on the bed was a handmade sign with the words Alan and Elisa sealed for time and all eternity, April 23rd, 2001. As if hearing the words hadn't been enough, now I had to see them. I knew all of these gestures had been made with good intentions, but they only emphasized how wrong the whole thing felt. The scene was surreal. Just a day earlier, this room had been a safe, comforting space, a sanctuary where I could escape the insanity about the pending wedding. Now it is the very corner, excuse me, now its every corner had an air of foreboding, and the walls seemed to close in on me. I could barely look at it, let alone sleep there. As I tried to calm down, I was suddenly lifted into the air. Alan had taken me in his arms and was preparing to carry me over the threshold. So they're not made aware of many things, but he knew to do that. I covered my face when I saw cameras poised and began to cry as he walked us into the room. The cameras continued to snap outside of the honeymoon hideout, and my extended family pressed me to smile for the photos, saying that one day I would want to look back at this happy time. After what felt like an eternity in front of the camera, Uncle Fred congratulated us once again. He said that he was proud of me for doing what the prophet had told me to do, but pride from him felt tainted and ugly. Nothing like it would have felt had I heard these special words from my real dad after a wedding that I actually wanted. Mom lingered in the hallway as long as she could to help me feel protected and loved. I had caught her crying back at the motel in Caliente when I'd accidentally walked into the bathroom and found her in the arms of my sister Rachel. I knew this was difficult for her too, but there was no way for her to protect me now. After a few minutes, she finally declared, "I'm going to bed." "No, Mom, you can't go," I pleaded. She didn't respond with words, but her eyes spoke her pain. I had no idea what a wedding night entailed, and I was horrified at the prospect and apprehensive to go into the room. I just feel like it's bad enough that you force all of this upon these girls, but then not to inform them that they are going to be assaulted is another level. Like they don't even know what's coming their way. They have not been told about what marital relations really are. They don't even know a lot about their own bodies. And here they're expected to be these things for these men to impregnate, because that's what it is. I watched as Mom faded into her room, closing the door behind her. I wanted nothing more than to trail along like a little girl, but I knew that I couldn't. Panic set in as Alan closed the door. I had never been alone with a man before, but here we were, in a bedroom of all places. I had no idea what to say, and an uncomfortable silence fell in between us. Awkwardly, I sat down on the bed and cringed as he approached me. He sat down next to me, and I quickly scooted over, grabbed my nightgown, and fled down the hall to the bathroom to change. As soon as I closed the door, I collapsed, dropping to my knees with my back pressed against the door. I couldn't even cry anymore. I was out of tears. I stayed in the bathroom for a long time, battling in my head while part of me was angry that I'd lost the fight. There was the other side, the faithful priesthood girl side, that was consoled that I had done what I was told to do. I tried hard to convince myself that it was going to work out and that God was watching over the situation. I thought of how hard I fought and of all those people who had congratulated me, telling me I was going to be happy someday. All of a sudden, I felt the urge to vomit and bent over the sink in horror. When the nausea finally passed, I stared at myself in the mirror, worrying what to do next. I knew I had to open the door and return to my bedroom, but the only thing I wanted to do was run into my mother's room and hide in the corner. This is what the priesthood told me to do, I convinced myself. I have no choice but to do it. And with that thought, I took off my socks, shoes, and dress, but that was as far as I would go. I put my nightgown over my tights, my special church undergarments, slip, and even my brawn panties. On top of all this, I wrapped the new pink satin robe tightly around me. I wasn't thinking that Alan would try to touch me. I just felt safer with all the layers. Even with all my clothes on, I still couldn't imagine being in a room by myself with a man. Yeah, because it's something you've never experienced. You've never been with a man, period, alone. The first time y'all were alone was walking out in the wilderness, and you really weren't alone because people were watching everywhere you went. And now here you are, finally alone and in a bedroom, which is a very intimate and personal place. It wasn't just that I was afraid of Alan. I was overwhelmed at the idea of being in bed with him. As a naive 14-year-old girl, I had no idea that people did more than sleep in bed. The truth was that I knew nothing about sex. Absolutely nothing. I didn't even know that sex existed. This is what I was talking about. It was a word not used in the FLDS culture, and what it described was never discussed before marriage. I didn't know that husbands and wives did it. Growing up in the FLDS, I had no concept of where babies really came from. No one had ever taught me about boys except that they were poisonous snakes. I had no idea what Alan expected of me now that I was his wife. All I knew was that I didn't want him to touch me, period. It makes me wonder what the difference are in the classes, in the teachings that the girls receive versus the teachings that the guys receive. Because why is it that they automatically know what they're supposed to do, whereas the girls don't really know? Alan was sitting on the bed when I returned from the bathroom. I watched as he rose to go to the bathroom himself, and when I heard the shower running, I felt relieved. I just want to go to sleep before he gets out of the shower, I thought. Closing my eyes, I heard him coming back into the room, and I lay perfectly still, trying to pretend that I was fast asleep. All of a sudden, I felt him hovering over me, and then his hand on my shoulder shaking me. I clenched my eyes shut, and eventually he gave up, crawled in next to me, hugged me, and then rolled over and went to sleep. It was one of the longest nights of my life. She hasn't slept in days at this point, and here she is still unable to sleep. I was drained, but too scared to sleep, not knowing what might happen. I tried to fight it, but there were moments throughout the night when I drifted off from sheer exhaustion. By dawn, I was back in my clothes and out on the terrace to watch the sunrise. Unsure of how to act when Alan woke up, I took off on foot down the road. I walked for hours up into the dusty heights of the mountains, contemplating my situation. I had taken this rugged path many times before, and there was comfort in the familiarity of a well-worn trail. I hoped to find a resolution, but when I returned to Uncle Fred's house late that morning, none had appeared. Mom and Alan were wondering what had happened to me. Mom took more pictures that morning. She wanted to have photos for scrapbooking. You know she's not happy, you know she's miserable, and yet you keep photographing her moments of unhappiness under the guise that she'll look back to this one day and be happy. It makes absolutely no sense. Like none. None, none, none. She wanted to have photos for scrapbooking, and though she had the best of intentions, it was hard for me to pose next to Alan. That afternoon, Fred gathered the three newly married couples in his office to tell us that he was sending us all on a honeymoon and gave each man an envelope of money for the trip. The next morning, we would be joining him on his usual trip to Phoenix to shop for the community store. A one night honeymoon, like, it's just an excuse to get them to get poked by these men. That's my opinion on it. The thought of going to Phoenix again left me momentarily excited. I've been there before and enjoyed it. I assumed that this trip would actually result in me spending less time with Alan. Though this gift was for everyone, it seemed clear that Uncle Fred hoped me spending time away from the house with Alan would bring me closer to him. For much of the day, Alan tried to be cute and kind, but whenever he tried to hold my hand, I would pull away. When he moved over next to me in bed that night, I rolled to the edge, almost falling off. I was too overwhelmed and too busy evading Alan's touch to check in and see how the other newlyweds were doing. But we all came together again for our departure. Everyone could tell that our relationship was not going as well as the others. This was on full display during the ride down to Phoenix when both Nancy and Lily sat close to their new husbands in Uncle Fred's Suburban, while I made sure there was an empty seat in the second row between Alan and me. When we arrived in Phoenix, Fred informed us that he'd gotten us each a hotel room, and the news terrified me. Why is Fred trying so hard to push everybody on top of everybody? I don't like this. I had envisioned this trip much like the one I'd taken with Uncle Fred in the past, but now I realized that we would be on our own. After our night at the motel in Phoenix, we would be traveling in Texas, New Mexico, and Colorado, stopping in other motels along the way. After checking into our room in Phoenix, I scurried to the bathroom for a long shower. My plan was simple. I would take as long as possible in the bathroom each night, hoping that Alan would be asleep. When I returned the first night, I had no such luck. When I came out of the bathroom, he was in his shorts. The only thing I could think was put some pants on. I had never seen a man with so little clothing except a few in swimming suits, and even then it had made me uncomfortable. Now, seeing my husband in his underwear made me cringe. Alan came over to my side of the bed and sat down beside me. Slowly, he began inching his hand up the back of my pajamas and unhooked my bra. I whipped around instantly to face him with fire in my eyes. Don't touch me. Well, he said, we're gonna have to do it sooner or later. I just looked at him blankly. I had no idea what it was. All I knew was that I didn't want anything to do with him. I moved into the other double bed to sleep that night, but the same thing happened the next night with Alan touching me even more. Petrified, I grabbed his hand as he slid it down my lower body. Please don't, I begged, my voice shaking with fear. I had never been touched like that by anyone, and there was nothing about what he was doing that seemed right. He tried to kiss me, and I avoided his lips as best as I could. The next day, I continued to avoid Alan. When we were out with the other couples, they teased us, trying to get me to kiss my new husband. If you kiss him, I'll give you $100, Nancy's husband Tim offered one afternoon. No, I said firmly. No, I'm not going to do it. See, this makes me think of some of the other books. So when you have the ladies that come in and say that their husbands were patient with them and that they didn't force themselves on them, and that for some of them it was like 3 or 4 months into their marriage before they truly consummated, it makes you look at situations like this where her cousin keeps on touching her, kind of trying to wear her down, and know that she really, really was not in a good place. Tim smiled. He'd been kind to me, and in some way I felt he understood my hesitation. He was nothing like Lily's husband, Martin, who was constantly making fun of people. Even as I insisted that Alan not kiss me, my fellow honeymooners managed to snap off one of two shots of him seizing a hug. I hadn't been expecting Alan to grab onto me at that moment as he suddenly pulled me toward him and pressed his lips to mine. Even now, when I look at the photo, it pains me to see how I had to block him with both arms. See, all these pictures that y'all are taking is not making her feel any better about the situation. She does not want this man. As he held me in his tight grip and forced me to kiss his sloppy lips, I fought to contain my anger. The only benefit of this disgusting and embarrassing kiss was that Tim considered it legitimate enough to give me $100, which was the most money I had ever had at one time. But sadly, it wasn't mine for long. My priesthood head made me give it to him later during our honeymoon. Y'all, I cannot. I cannot. That forced kiss was the only time I kissed Alan during the honeymoon. I did my best to not even talk to him. To prevent Alan from holding my hand, I found a small paper bag and pencil and kept my hands busy by logging the trip's events on it. I almost felt bad when Alan started to cry from the teasing he was getting from Lily and Nancy over my reluctance to get near him. But the fact that he continued to touch me in spite of my protest prevented me from having compassion for him. Exactly. Don't fall for them tears. He's just embarrassed. It doesn't have anything to do with him feeling sorry for you. It's him being embarrassed that he's not getting what he wants. And unfortunately, at some point, I think he's going to take it. I hate to think that way, but that's what seems to go on in these things. On the last night of our honeymoon, I woke up to the sensation of my skin being touched beneath my nightgown. What are you doing? I demanded. I'm doing what I have a right to do. A right? You don't have a right to my body if I don't give you access. I'm sorry, married or not, I don't feel that way. Alan replied with an air of entitlement. I'm your husband, he announced, as if that gave him rights to my body. Please don't touch me, was the only response I could muster. I had no idea why he insisted on feeling my most private areas. It was clear that I would have to be on alert, even at night when I was supposed to be asleep. The next morning, while we cruised along the highway toward home, I overheard Nancy and Lily whispering and giggling about physical relations with their husbands. Even though Alan hadn't been shy about putting his hands on my body, I didn't know what they were talking about. So, Nancy whispered with a little smile stretched across her face, have you guys really done anything? What? No, I replied, baffled. Well, she assured me, maybe it could happen tonight. We could put a bug in Alan's ear. I was a little frustrated as the whole conversation flew over my head, but later I would look back at my naivety with longing. I was relieved when we returned to Short Creek that Saturday and resumed living next to my mother. Although I had been alone with Alan at night, I felt comforted knowing that Mom was nearby. I remained scared and couldn't shake the feeling that had set in when Alan said he had a right to me. Like I was his to claim, like someone had just handed me to him and now he could do whatever he wanted. I had no idea what he did want, but I knew that sooner or later, this thing he was trying to do with me was going to happen. And like most things that had happened in my life, there would be nothing I could do to stop it. But I wasn't about to give up without a fight. A couple of weeks after our wedding, Alan's parents invited us to their home to celebrate his birthday. He would be turning 21 on May 12th. He would be turning 21. She is 14. And since we had planned a trip to Canada to visit other family members on that day, Alan's mother had prepared a nice pre birthday dinner for us. After dinner, Alice suggested that it would be nice for us to walk back to Fred's. He was clearly trying hard to make me feel comfortable, and I didn't know how to treat him, especially after the way he had been touching me. I didn't want to be with him, but I knew I had been acting mean and I felt bad. I told myself that I had to give this a shot. I was doing my best to fight the feelings of revulsion and find a way to accept Alan as my priesthood head, so I agreed. We'd been walking for several minutes when Alan directed us to the small school grounds not far from Uncle Fred's home. There was a big grassy area with some swings, and he suggested that we stop there and talk for a while. We sat down on the grass, looking up at the early night sky. Do you love me? He asked. I was quiet. It felt okay sitting on the ground, staring up at the stars. It was a beautiful night, and I could see so many constellations. It didn't make me love him as I was supposed to, but it was the most effort he'd made toward romance since we were married. I felt Alan get up beside me and turning to look at him. I was shocked by what I saw. Alan stood in front of me, exposing himself. What are you doing? Put that away, I demanded, closing my eyes tightly. This is what I look like, he announced matter of factly. I don't even want to see, I shouted, jumping up. I ran as fast as I could toward home, with Alan close on my tail. I'd never seen a man's penis before, except when changing baby diapers. Tears streamed from my eyes. As I tried to understand what had just happened, I raced upstairs to my mom's room. You know what? If you think about this, and if she was a girl that was sitting outside and a man exposed himself like that to her, he would be arrested. Yet none of that is going to happen in instances like this. None of it. What's wrong? What happened? Mom asked. I couldn't bring myself to tell her. I was too embarrassed, and I thought that she would think I was the most terrible, evil, disgusting person in the world. It was as though I had done something horribly wrong by seeing a man like that. We had always been taught that it was a sin to even touch a boy, let alone see him naked. I hate him, I blurted out. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. Now that one was in there 3 times. Who? Alan. Let's see what happened. I'm not going in that room. I'm not going to talk to him. Did he do something? Mom asked. I broke into sobs. Mom's attempts to calm me down were interrupted by a knock at the door. It's no point. Her mom ain't protecting her. Her mom's gave her to the wolves. So, anyways, Elisa, I heard Alan's voice summoning me. Go away, I shouted. Lisi, Mom admonished. She was desperate for me to stop acting so disrespectfully because she can't do that to her priesthood head. I knew I was being immature. No, you're not. You're not being immature at all. You don't even know what's going on around you because these people haven't told you. You're not being immature. I knew I was being immature, but I couldn't help it What was happening was just too difficult, and I didn't have the tools to handle it. I waited in mom's room until 2 or 3 in the morning before returning to my bedroom. Turning the doorknob, I tried to be as quiet as I could, hoping not to wake Alan. That man waiting for her. He's tired of waiting. If he went as far as exposing himself outside, he's not going to wait. But when I stepped inside, I found him in his underwear, sprawled out on top of the bedspread. Reflectively, I backed away as he stood and came toward me. I was trembling as he reached for my buttons and began unfastening my dress. Don't touch me, I cried. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Suddenly, he pulled off his underwear and exposed himself to me again. Closing my eyes, I begged him, please don't do this. I don't want anything to do with this. This is what we're supposed to be doing, Alan announced. This is what married people do. Well, I don't know what you're doing, so please don't. Alan hesitated. Don't you ever want to have a baby? He asked. Not with you, I told him in a trembling voice. Oh, I didn't say that trembling. I'm sorry. Not with you. Sorry. So I'm just like, come on. You know, I'm not going to hurt you, he explained as his hands worked the back of my dress. This is what the prophet told me to do to you. Oh my God. So I was asking, how is it that they know what to do? It's because Warren and all the other pervs before him tell them what to do. As the word prophet escaped his lips, I felt suddenly alarmed that I was not following what the priesthood had intended. Somehow it had never crossed my mind that the church wanted us to do whatever it was that Alan was doing. I tried to trust in what Alan was telling me, but the way he touched me was too unsettling and I hated how it made me feel. Panicked and unwilling to continue, I leaned close and whispered, please just go to bed. Please just get dressed. But the words had little effect on him. As he pulled off my dress, I began to cry. Stop it, Alan instructed. Don't act like a baby. Do you know what I am doing? No, I said, recoiling. I watched as he circled behind me, and I felt his firm hand unfasten my bra after he had removed my church undergarments. I thought that they had to keep on their undergarments to have relations. Isn't that what Christine told us? Let me continue. I grabbed the blanket from the bed and held it in front of me as a final layer of protection. He ripped the blanket from my grasp, exposing me completely. I stood trembling, feeling horribly ashamed. He took a step back and his gaze crawled over my entire body. I've always wanted to see a woman naked, he proclaimed. I'd never felt as vulnerable as I did during those moments when he scrutinized every inch of me for the first time. I hadn't been naked in front of anyone since I was a little girl. Everything about me had been laid bare. Standing in front of Alan, I could feel his eyes taking in my body with a look that I did not trust, but I was too frightened to try and put my clothes back on. I was crying as he brought me over to the bed. Now, do you know what I'm going to do to you? He said in a weird way. No, I responded with a whimper. He began to tell me what he was planning to do, and it only made me confused. When he started to describe it, he got excited in a way I had never seen before, and the look on his face was almost animal. A sick feeling rose inside of me. A scream bubbled up, and I was on my feet. Grabbing the blanket, I ran for the door, desperate for the protection of my mother's room when I saw that mom wasn't there. I flopped down on her bed and began to sob into her pillow. My cries eventually woke my sister Allie, who crawled over and without saying a word put her arms around me. I'm sorry for waking you. Go back to sleep. It's a school night, I said. I'm just helping you cry. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Her response made me cry all the way more, but that night, with my little sister curled up beside me, I slept peacefully in mom's bed. All better? Allie asked me when we woke up the next morning. Yes, I said with a smile, and she smiled back. Even though she was young, she knew I was not okay, but my answer was sufficient for her and she started to prepare for school. I too had to get ready for school. I wanted to finish the ninth grade because school was very important to me. Y'all, she ain't even out of ninth grade. As much as I dislike Uncle Fred's school, it was better than being home having to face Alan. I was glad to be on my way that morning, but I hated how everyone treated me differently because I was married. It was like they refused to let me be a 14-year-old girl anymore. Marriage, it seemed, was more important for a girl than anything else, especially learning. I was deep into my algebra exam the morning when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Oh, Lord, they're going to tell her she doesn't need to go to school anymore. There is someone at the door for you. My teacher's voice startled me from my math problem. Looking up, I saw Alan standing in the hallway, peeking into the classroom. Can you tell him that I'm in the middle of my test? I asked my teacher. I'm going to tell him, I'm not going to tell him anything, Mr. Richer informed me. He was one of my stricter teachers, and I knew he wouldn't help me. Rising to my feet, I hesitantly made my way to the door. When I reached it, I saw that the school principal had accompanied Alan. I'm going to just take you for the day, Alan told me. The principal said it's okay. Like, what? But I have a test, I said, hoping the principal would insist that I stay to complete it. But since this was a priesthood school, neither Alan nor the principal saw the importance of my finishing the exam. Following Alan to the parking lot, I got into the passenger seat. I was livid, but held my tongue as we drove around Utah and Arizona. Alan was angry at how I'd reacted the previous night, and with a raised voice, he related his frustration. I'd never seen him lose his cool, and his ill temper took me by surprise. In the FLDS, becoming angry was frowned upon. I just hate you, I told him, and I hope you go to hell. At first, he seemed as if he was about to melt into tears, but after a few minutes, he got so upset that he smashed his sunglasses on the steering wheel so hard that a piece of the wheel broke off and fell to the floor. You didn't go and tell your mom, did you? He demanded. Tell my mom what? You didn't tell her about anything, did you? Now, if you're doing things right, why would you be worried about her telling her mom? I'm just saying. I knew he was referring to what had happened in our bedroom the previous night. No. Well, you better not, he reprimanded. She needs to stay out of our business completely. If it was up to me, we wouldn't even live by her. That night, I refused to go to my room and stayed with my mother, but I didn't confide in her, despite her offer to support. The following morning, I was summoned to Uncle Fred's office where I found Alan with Fred. My stomach churned as Fred motioned me to sit down. Alan tells me that you have been rebellious towards him. He began, What's going on? I wanted to tell Uncle Fred the truth and how I was certain that Alan didn't deserve to be a priesthood man and have all the privileges that came along with it. First of all, rebellious towards him because she's saying that she doesn't want this man to touch her body. That's being rebellious. Instead, I tried to save myself. I'm doing the best I can, I told him. I was furious that Alan had gone to him to complain that I wasn't being a submissive wife, and I hated the smug look he wore as Uncle Fred reprimanded me for disobedience. Lisi, you're not standing up to your vows, Fred said in a soft voice. I could tell by his tone that Uncle Fred was displeased with me, and I shrank in the face of his reprimand. At the end of the meeting, Alan grabbed my hand and led me from the room. I waited until we were out of Uncle Fred's line of sight before I pulled my hand away from him and ran to find my mother. A few days had passed when I decided I needed to speak with my mother about what Alan was doing in our bedroom. I was certain that he was telling me a tall tale when he said that it was his right. I couldn't imagine that it was okay, and I wanted to hear it from my mom. I wish she would have talked to somebody else, but I guess that's all she has, right? Is her mom that's basically going to let her know that she's supposed to do it. Mom, how do people have a baby? I asked her straight out. Well, she stammered, that is for Alan to tell you. What the? Your daughter is asking you how people have a baby. And as her mom, you can't tell her what that involves. You tell her to ask Alan, who himself has never had a baby, and at this point should not have done anything to have a baby. Let the way your religion be set up. Her refusal to answer my question bothered me. If I had only known what was going on, I would have at least understood what Alan was trying to do, as it was his actions only as it was, his actions only made me feel dirty. All she would have had to do was explain what had to happen for a woman to have children, but she didn't. She'd been admonished by Uncle Fred to stay out of our affairs, and she couldn't even tell me the one thing that I needed to know. That's wild. That is wild. Days later, I was talking to one of the girls who gotten married with me. She could see I was very upset and needed a friend. Taking pity on me, she told me a little about the man and wife relations, but her explanation was terribly vague and a little scary, and I walked away even more confused. That night, I returned to my room to find Alan waiting up for me. It's time for you to be a wife and do your duty, he told me as he walked through the door. No, I said, breaking down into tears. Please don't make me do anything. I don't want to have that kind of thing with you. Why? Alan asked me. Because I don't like you, I said, unable to hold my feelings back. I could see that my words hurt him, and he looked upset. It's just the last thing I want to do is spend the rest of my life with you. Alan's face grew red with anger. He grabbed me, and without saying another word, undressed us both. I was frozen with fear and again asked him to please let me be. He pulled me over to the bed and pushed me down. With tears pouring out of my eyes, I tried to block it all out. My entire body was shaking, and I was crying as he got on top of me. Please stop. I don't know what you're doing. I can't do this, I begged. It's okay, Alan told me as he touched me all over my body. You're gonna learn that this is what is supposed to happen. And then it finally did happen. I just lay there in shock. It hurt so bad, and I thought, God, please let me die. They don't even prepare these women. It's the same thing that we heard in Christine Brown's story. They do not even prepare these women's bodies for penetration. It is assault on so many levels that they don't even make sure that these girls that are virgins are prepared. It's already painful enough when you experience that for the first time, but add on top of that that you're not you get what I'm saying. Read in between the lines. Add that on top of it. They're being assaulted in so many ways. As he put himself inside of me, I wanted to scream for help, but there was no one to help me. I had nowhere to hide. My mother's room, my little sister's embrace, Uncle Fred, Uncle Warren, nothing and no one would save me. And so I lay there silently, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, watching a part of me die. When it was all over, I curled into a ball and continued to cry. Alan rolled over and fell asleep, and I lay there feeling like I had been left for dead. Rising from the bed, I went into the bathroom to clean up. I didn't want to go to my mom. I felt dirty and used, and I was worried that she would think I was a disgusting, evil person. Nothing could cleanse the soiled feeling I had inside. I felt sick, and my thoughts turned to death. Rummaging through the medicine cabinet, I found a half bottle of Tylenol. I poured the tablets into my palm and swallowed them, convinced that they would be enough to kill me. I then grabbed a bottle of ibuprofen and swallowed what was left of those too. I collapsed in a heap next to the tub. I just wanted to die and not deal with Alan, Uncle Warren, or Uncle Fred again. I felt so hurt and betrayed by them all, including my mother. Mom found me early the next morning on the floor of the bathroom, my head in the toilet, vomiting. Alarmed, she gathered me up and held me in her arms. What's wrong? What you. What's wrong, Lisi? She cried as she brought me to her room. I couldn't bring myself to tell her what had happened with Alan or that I had taken 2 bottles of pills in an attempt to escape from my life, only to have a sudden change of heart. I had made myself throw up minutes after I'd taken the pills and had spent the last several hours desperately trying to purge them. As bad as my life had become, I had pulled myself back from the brink of self destruction. I had no idea how I was going to get out of this marriage or out of my life. But that night, I had realized that killing myself was not the answer. From then on, my goal was simple: to survive. I needed to survive in this marriage until I could figure out my next step. That morning, with my stomach weak from heaving all night and my body exhausted from sleep deprivation, I made a resolution. Somehow, I would get through this. Somehow, I would survive. And that's how we're ending it. She has just been violated and she doesn't even know it. She has just been violated and she is like others who have been hurt and harmed, afraid to tell her mom what happened. And it goes back to how these women are not educated and informed, and how they're told to stay away from men 1 minute and then expected to just be there and do whatever it is that the man tells them to do. I absolutely hate that this is still a thing. This one was a tough reading. You guys, let me know your thoughts on this. You know what makes it even worse? She did this with her mother. He did this, I should say, not her. I'm not putting it on her. He did this with her mother just a few steps away. That had to be even more hurtful for her. That her mom was right there, that the uncles were there, and they all sent her to have this violation happen to her. I hate it. Let me know your thoughts on this chapter. Until next time, peace.